Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Explain Yourself. My name is Joey Galvez, and I'm here with my pal, Benjamin Morse, and we're going to be talking to you guys about some really cool Kickstarter comics today. But before we do that, I'm going to check in with my pal because I haven't seen him since last week. So, Ben, how you doing, man? I know you've been in the garden all day and doing some really fun stuff. So how are you doing, man? Are you cooling off now?
I'm doing good. I'm sore. I'm tired. I'm a little sunburned, but I'm excited to be inside at my desk where it's nice and cool and talk some comics.
Fantastic, fantastic. We have some great creators we want to talk to you guys a little bit about. Before we do, we have some things that we want to get out of the way really quick. Right now, Ben, you have a last minute uh, uh, campaign going on right now for Scarlet. Right before it goes to print, we want
I
to
do.
make sure that everybody checks that out on Zoop. Right.
Yeah. A couple days left. Files are approved. We're waiting for an ETA from the printer. Just wanted to give people one more chance to jump in on this campaign. I'm really excited to finally get this out to everybody, and I'm starting up work on the sequel. So the timing is pretty good.
Fantastic. And then if you guys because this is a Kickstarter roundtable, we want to make sure that you guys know that there is some really cool stuff available to you guys. We are a Gemini mailing affiliate. So if you guys use Geek Collective 10 at checkout at GeminiMailing.com, you guys can get 10% off your till there. That saves you a good amount of money. I had a couple buddies use it a couple weeks ago, and it saved them like $200-300 off of their thing. We want to make sure you guys are using that because that helps fund this show, and it helps make sure that we are getting more of this really cool stuff to you guys. So make sure you guys use Geek Collective 10 at checkout. And I think that's about it, man. I don't have anything running right now, but we have a couple of things coming up soon. We got Grandma Chainsaw that's going to be dropping very soon. We have Don't Push the Red Button as well. So make sure you guys are checking out all the really cool stuff coming from us. So that's all we have today. But let's go ahead and Benjamin, I'm going to have you introduce our guests for today.
All right. So our guests today are Ivan Brandon and Jimmy Gaspero. Ivan, you may know some of his work from DC, Marvel, Image. He did the Cross Bronx. He did some Final Crisis. He did Viking, which is the one I really liked. And he has a campaign right now that's live called The Roman Stars, which is really exciting. And Jimmy has a story in a horror anthology from Band of Bards called From the Static, which is really exciting. I've seen a lot of the pages from this one, and it looks really cool. So, guys, thanks for coming on. It's great to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Am I visible? I'm not
Glad to be
visible, am
here.
I?
Oh, yeah, we can see you, Ivan.
Okay, great. I can't see myself, but that's usually my preference. Hi,
Yeah.
nice to see you all.
Yeah, it's great to have you guys in the show. So we're going to kind of just do a quick elevator pitch for each of your stories. Ivan, if you can give us like the elevator pitch for the Roman Stars, and then we'll jump over to Jimmy for his story.
Sure. This is my first time talking about the Roman Stars, so excuse me if I fumble through it a bit. But basically, the Roman Stars is my take on Caesar's story. It is basically the later years of his campaign and him just sort of going to war with everybody and escaping his responsibilities, escaping his sort of personal his sort of normal daily life to go off and in this case travel the galaxy and attack other civilizations. So we, myself and the artist V. Gagnon, been working on this for about 3 years, and it's the elevator pitch for just sort of physically is it's a French style oversized A4 hardcover graphic novel.
Yeah, and it looks great. I've seen this. The artwork's beautiful. I understand the book's already done.
Yeah.
And ready to go to print. And so this
Both
is pretty
books.
exciting.
It's 2 volumes, and both are done.
Awesome. Jimmy, let's jump over to you real quick. You're part of the From the Static anthology. Can you give us a quick rundown of the book itself and just what your story's about?
Sure. Yeah. So From the Static, as you said, it's published by Band of Bards. It's a horror anthology, 16 different stories in it. I think it's 144 pages. A lot of great indie creators in the book. I mean, just some phenomenal talent. I love just about, all the stories in it. My story, the one that I wrote, it's called "The Unfortunate Consequences of Being a Time Traveler." I was lucky enough to work with artist Sam Owen, and it was colored by Ben Humanek, and Micah Myers lettered it. Essentially, my story is about a character named Kurt Desmond who kind of has a unique ability to time travel, similar to Quantum Leap, let's say, where it's his consciousness but not his person that travels, and he generally uses it to, like, revisit past memories more so than change his own past. But later in his life, something starts to invade his memories and starts changing them for the worse and attacking Kurt. So that's kind of the short version of what my 6-page story is about.
Sounds cool. Very like horrifying, Black Mirror-ish, type of disturbing horror. I like it.
Yeah, this I think this anthology was put out before, and it was also in the direct market as well. But they're bringing it back with a couple brand new covers and a handful of really awesome extras. They're doing the blacklight activated glow in the dark cover, which is really cool. I have one of those here, which is really gorgeous, and they're doing it in green too. I don't know, should I pull it out, take it, show you guys? But it's such a cool thing that these things are, because they're they look like glass. It looks so clean, and look how that thing is just shiny, and that's metal, right? So they're doing stuff like that, and they have all kinds of really cool stuff that they're rolling out. They also rolled out 2 brand new products in this Kickstarter, which is their mystery box, and they have some really cool hybrid cards where it's you get a physical card and you get a bunch of really cool digitals from Global Comics and all that stuff. They have gold, silver, and bronze editions. They're also going to be this one has not been announced yet, but they're also going to be dropping some stuff that could possibly be pertaining to each issue of different books and stuff like that, and different trades and stuff. So keep an eye on all that really cool stuff. The Band of Bards is doing some really, really fun stuff right now.
Yeah, they are. Absolutely. So Ivan, I want to jump over to you. If you want to share the tab for your campaign and kind of show some of the art, take us through a little more detail. It just seems like a really cool, you've got some great designs in there. So it's a really good marriage of like some science fiction-y stuff with, Roman, all that look. So if you want to share that tab, we'll bring that up.
Oh, we lost the sound.
Oh, sure.
Nope, we can't hear you.
Oh, Ivan, can you hear us?
Oh, I muted for sorry. I muted for Jimmy's. Sorry about that. Let's try that again.
And I can share it too if that's.
Yeah, no worries. I just didn't realize it. I didn't. I think I can do it now. Let's try it again. It's processing. I've never used this program.
There we go.
Here we go. All right, so this is just our cover. It's covered by our artist, V. Gagnon. V's pretty new to the business, but obviously an exceptional artist. So, we've been working on this for some time. I was crazy excited about doing just something that didn't really feel like any of the other things I'd done before, and something that, a lot of the stuff that we're doing here, this is my first Kickstarter, is sort of an experiment and trying to figure out just, different ways that I can do things as the world changes, as the market changes, as all that sort of stuff. I'm lucky enough to have been doing this long enough and have an okay following and all that sort of stuff. And I sort of want to take a few more risks and see just what's possible. So V and I, like I said, have been working on this since a little bit before the pandemic. And this is our cover. And then this is a variant, special variant that Eric Kennedy did for us. Beautiful image of Cleopatra, our version of Cleopatra, who actually is not in the first volume. She's in the second one, but we really liked the image and thought it was special for this. And I also have a preview page that she's in. That's kind of a sneak peek at volume 2.
Very cool. I love his artwork. He's great.
Yeah. Eric's incredible. Eric, and he blames me for working in comics. So I got my arm twisted. Not arm twisted as if it would need to be twisted, but he was basically like, you better let me do something here. So
that's really cool. His Inktober stuff lately has been awesome too. I've been following.
He's incredible. He's just a crazy genius. So that's that, and then we have these are just the intro pages of the actual book, but I thought they looked cool, so I'm sharing them. That's the intro page, and then we have just some art unlettered because I figured you couldn't read it at this size anyway. So you have. I believe this is Caesar's army arriving in Gaul. That's a different region, time of day, same war. I don't want to give too much about the story, but this is Gaul also. So we're playing with format quite a bit. We're playing with page design, to give people a sort of unique look at Caesar they may not have seen before. So this is just a little moment with Caesar and his lieutenants, Mark Antony and Decimus Brutus. That's Caesar post-Gaul addressing his troops.
Wow. And these pages are fantastic.
The Roman fleet arriving in Greece, actually.
That's so cool. I see like so much. I feel like I see when I look at some of the shots of the soldiers, I see like Drouillet a little bit. There's like some of the Hercules from Disney a little bit. Even the color scheme reminds me of the Dark Empire comics Dark Horse did in the 90s, which just so much stuff while also seeming like really fresh and new. Which is awesome to see.
Yeah, a lot of it is like I said, a lot of it is an experiment, but a lot of it is also just trying to play with, I think comics have been, I don't want to say stuck, but American comics do sort of a specific thing. And I think that in whether it's indie or whether it's, different genre stuff, it tends to sort of feel somewhat like that thing, and so we really wanted to play with the idea of they're really, really popular animation, for example. There's just really, really popular, cool, much more modern stuff going on in art, and in a year where we have another Spider-Verse movie, we have that new Ninja Turtles movie, which is like practically looks like it's hand painted. It's just gorgeous. And just really just playing with the idea of like what, we went with a different layout, which I had never worked in landscape, but it really, really, for something that's, about a journey, about a long journey, it really gives some sort of depth and some distance to a lot of this stuff. So it's V, when we first started talking, V really leaned into the idea of doing this in this format and really, really, I'm trying to think if we have, that's just the back cover. But this is a 2-page spread. So you can see how wide, this format allows us to go. And, it really just like really trying to play with the idea of not being married to the idea of how many, when you're working on single issue format, you're dealing with either 20 or 22 pages, and you get used to dealing with that, but it's a sort of superficial control over the storytelling. And in this case, we wanted to really just play with, like when we start off at the beginning here, like give ourselves the space to really slowly, dramatically build into the mood of the book and give these things as much room to breathe as we think that they need, in a way that like would be difficult to do sometimes at a different publisher. So it's been really, really cool to have this freedom. It's been really, really cool to watch, V really obviously knock it out of the park, to where, this stuff, again, there are elements that may feel like other things, but it I've been doing this for 20 something years and never done anything that looks remotely like this. And I've had beautiful books, but it feels really sort of refreshing to be able to tell things in this and to work with, from the cover through, something that really focuses on almost a design element of storytelling rather than like
how do you feel that Kickstarter is accepting this? Because I feel like this kind of fits that I've been doing this for a few years now, and the things that I noticed that do really well in the Kickstarter space are things that would not do well in the direct market, right? So, how do you feel like the Kickstarter space has are they as receptive as you thought they would be, or are they more or less?
It's hard to tell, and it's still super early days, but it definitely feels like people are, having a positive reaction, and it's. I think what was really compelling to me about going on Kickstarter is that it's really its own sort of ecosystem to whatever degree, and it's people who are really, really open to helping people do new things, and being part of it, and that's. I don't know. It's just sort of refreshing after dealing with, again, no offense to comics. Comics has paid my rent for 20 years, but just the idea of like, it's very sort of married to very old systems. And a lot of it's like, things that we've been doing for 70 years, which aren't necessarily the things you choose to do now. If we were starting the business from scratch now, we probably wouldn't do things the way we do them now. So this really gives me the freedom to really decide what I think is the right way to do any given thing. Like, for example, I haven't been doing a lot of press outreach. You reached out, that seemed cool. So we're talking now, but like just really playing with how we're going to do this and how we're not seeing it as the audience, not seeing it as only like a comic shop audience, although I do want the comic shop people to be involved. I really want, to start thinking of, which a more sort of global sense of, I think the interesting thing about like the proliferation of social media, the internet, and all that sort of stuff is a lot of things became, when I was younger, everything was, Americans consumed mostly American content, and now I think there's a lot more of a sort of global conversation where it's just cool stuff, and people want to share cool stuff and people have friends overseas and all that sort of stuff. It just becomes much more. It becomes broader in that way, and that to me is what it should be. It should be just like, is this a cool thing or is it not a cool? Like if it's going to appeal to people, it's going to appeal to people, but not because of a demographic or because of, because it's marketed in a very specific way, as some other thing would be. I'm really trying to, almost on a visceral level, figure out like what's going to get an emotional reaction out of people, and this feels like it's an interesting way to do that because, it's such an audience that's sort of warm to experimentation and warm to creation, in a way that, comics is a tricky system for everybody. It's it's a lot of people who are risk averse because the cash flow isn't fantastic and they can't take big swings because I mean, we learned in the pandemic, we were all a couple bad weeks from the entire system collapsing. So I get that part of it, and I'm just trying to take advantage of being in a different place and feeling creatively in a different place that sort of ride out a different wave and see what happens. But
I think people are ready for that. I mean, I always as a kid, I discovered Mobius, and I knew about that, and then I think everybody kind of knew Mobius and Drew A and some of those guys. And I feel like just in the last 4 or 5 years, I've seen so many more people that I wouldn't expect to hear, to hear talking about those guys, or even the stuff that's coming out currently from Europa and all that stuff. That's on people's radar in a big way. And I think with the formats, certainly, and then I think also the art styles, people are just so much more open to seeing different things. And again, you even see that bleeds through to what you see from Marvel and DC now. I think the range of stuff you see in the monthly books is like all over the place. So as an artist, I love to see that kind of bleeding through to everywhere else.
Yeah, I mean, it was that push now lately with all of these beautiful books coming from, like Breccia's stuff from Fantagraphics, for example, that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
A few years ago, there were almost no Mobius books in print in the US. And it was like infuriating because you're like, this is world renowned, probably one of the top 3 most respected guys on the planet in comics. And we just didn't necessarily, and it's weird because he's worked here even, but it's crazy how much that was disregarded up until recently. And I mean, I don't know how those things sell at Fantagraphics or Europa, but I hope they sell well because they're, and I love how sort of reverently they're presented. They're beautiful retro ones are like the like foamy hardcovers, like really, really cool looking stuff. And I mean, that's what it deserves instead of like what I've been carrying around some like dog-eared French, version of all of these books for years because they just weren't available. Mm-hmm. And so I'm glad that push is happening because it's just, I don't know, good stuff is good stuff. It's something I lament about in the film business that there's so many incredible movies that Americans never get to see because it just doesn't fit into like the idea of what we watch. I think the younger audience is consuming globally. Even, I mean, the biggest selling thing here, the biggest selling thing in France, which is a huge market, is manga. And so these kids don't have those hangups that I grew up with. I mean, not me personally. I'm just saying that the industry, that I grew up in had, and that's sort of fascinating because they don't really care about like all of the things that they're just sort of doing their own thing. They're really sort of following their own muse. And that's kind of fascinating because, the American comics industry is pretty sort of regimented in that way and pretty stubborn in terms of changing gears. So it's cool to see. And also, hasn't always been very friendly to younger people lately. So it's cool to see these kids, like, it's not that they're not excited about things, it's just that, these publishers haven't necessarily found inroads to these kids, but these kids are open to, to cool stuff.
Yeah, which is why I think, which is why I think Kickstarter is the best place for a lot of those different things, right? Is because we get to consume whatever we want, right? And it's at our fingertips. And there's like 300 and something comics on the platform right now. So there's tons of books that you can look at, and the fact that if you're searching out something that you're not going to find in the direct market, and this is the marketplace for that, right? This is, I think I don't know if I can, I think I hammer that thing into the ground way too much sometimes, but I think I think it's right, because we're so used to the direct market and the way the direct market does their books and the way we consume those books as well, and we're just so used to it, and it's really hard to get us creators to step outside of that box and say, okay, I got to market this in a different way, or I got to think about this story in a different way. This story, now that we're looking at it, it only could have been told in this kind of way, right? And that's kind of what I think like a lot of us need to understand is look at your stories, but think outside of the norm and try to figure out how that story should be told. And I think that this is definitely the place to do that.
Yeah,
that was.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, way back when I did Viking, I did sort of an off format, and we were terrified because everybody made such a big deal about the retailers want a very specific thing and they're not going to like it and all that sort of stuff. And then Image went out with the book to a retailer conference like before it came out, and we sold out like within an hour. Just sort of hand selling. I'll take 1,000. I'll take 100, whatever it was, and realizing that when they could physically see that this thing was unique and special and different, and not like it, and to a purpose, people reacted so positively to it, and that kind of taught me a lesson. And then it was funny because then there was a little trend after that of a lot of people were contacting me. Can you give me the page dimensions? I want to use that format. And I was like, I'm trying to tell you, the message I was trying to get out was that you can do anything, not just this one other thing, and a comic. I don't think you could print a rectangle comic. I mean a triangle comic, but my point was that like if something feels right, why not?
You know what? I'm going to try now. Now that because you told me I can't, I'm going to do it.
Actually, when I was first doing Scarlet Twilight, somebody else was on Kickstarter with a comic that if it came out of a scroll, like it came as a cylinder, you unrolled it and it was like 60 feet or something like that.
Oh, wow.
And it did really well.
I think that might be my friend Ronald's comic through, I think that might have been my friend Ronald's, Ronald Wimberly. I think
that sounds right.
Originally a web comic.
And that does sound right. He was a New York guy too. I remember that.
Yeah. He's a buddy. He lives not far from here.
Oh, cool. Where are you at in New York?
What's that?
Where are you at in New York?
I'm in Crown Heights, Brooklyn.
Okay, that's the first place I lived when I moved to the city. I lived there for a few months, and then went to Bed-Stuy and ended up upstate.
Oh, nice. Yeah, Ron's over in Bed-Stuy. But yeah, that's that publisher I love because that's a lot of what they're doing. So Ron has another comic that's just a newspaper, basically.
Oh, cool.
And it's printed in this beautiful, like it's just this oversized thing, and there are interviews in it. There's text, there's art, but it's just taking these kinds of risks. I always not laugh like funny, haha, but this is such an incredibly risky business to get into. And there's nobody's mom was just like, I hope my kid goes in the comics, So like you're really risking a lot, especially, if someone wants to have kids and that kind of stuff, you're taking on a lot of risk to do this business. Mm-hmm. And it just is always funny to me that like all of my friends, I sort of say that, you've taken this monster risk and risked your entire career, but like then become very risk averse about what kind of stuff and how to present it and that kind of stuff. And I think that's it's just interesting because like you're already
here. You've made the choice. You're out on the plank, like
you're risking it even more.
Yeah. And to me, like it's these things, look, they're not nothing. They obviously can be very expensive and make or break in terms of, production and all that sort of stuff. But from the perspective of mass media, they're a very inexpensive format. And so the risk relative to other things is much lower. And so for me, the idea of like doing smaller things and just trying to see it's not the scariest thing you could do. There are much scarier paths. And they can be rewarding. I mean, you look at, I grew up, I came up with like Robert Kirkman, who, at the time did this weird black and white comic, which was not a thing you were supposed to do. And nobody had any inkling that it was going to be, it would last 5 issues, much less be one of the biggest comics of all time. And that required a risk, it was doing a format, an ongoing black and white format, which was not something that, at least in US Comics, there wasn't any ongoing series that were successful in that format,
Yeah, but it hit at the right time. And I think, it's awesome that we've had all this discourse on the internet about, I think dudes are supposed to think about the Roman Empire like once a day. And you get at the right time.
I lucked into 3 years later, a right time. Yeah, that was a really interesting thing to me. I mean, I obviously think about the Roman Empire quite a bit, only because I need to. But it was really interesting to hear that. Of like, I didn't realize how popular the topic was amongst the average person.
Yeah, it's weird. I think like probably 4 or 5 times a week, not every day, but
it's I wonder like how like. Is it a fully formed thing? Is it just an idea? Like, like, is it people going deep with it, or just like, I like Caesar, and then they move on.
Some days it's just that.
Yeah,
it was cool.
Is it maybe it's a Caesar salad? I don't know.
Yeah, but that's true. That works.
There you go.
Absolutely. So, let's jump over real quick to Jimmy. Talk about your book a little bit. If you want to share your tab.
How do I interact this?
Sure. Let me see if I can do that.
All right, there it is.
All right, did that work? Okay, good. All right, so from the Static, as we said earlier, it's a horror anthology from Band of Bards, a publisher out of Buffalo, New York. Chris Benamati and Tim Stalinsky are kind of the two gentlemen behind Band of Bards, and they curated this anthology. They accepted open pitches, and it's 16 stories from a bunch of different creators. Yeah, as Joey had mentioned, that it went out. There was like a print run towards the end of last year, I think October, November, this same time. But now they are back on, or not really, brought it to Kickstarter for the first time. With a couple of different covers. The first original cover, I'm just going to scroll down here to this part. Rio Burton did the first cover, but now they have two additional ones. One by J.J. Lopez, and the other is Terry Suska, I believe. And they have the glow-in-the-dark metal variant that Joey was talking about, a spot foil variant. They have a hollow chrome variant, and a bunch of other kind of great stuff and add-ons that you can get in terms of the box of Bards with some of their other comics. And I'll scroll down. This is Joey had mentioned.
That box of Bards is really cool because it's a really fun little mystery box. And we rolled that one out because and just disclaimer, I work for Band of Bards as their social media manager, so disclaimer there. We rolled that one out, and it was such a fun thing. We had Tim make a little video on this. We're gonna post it on YouTube so you guys can see what can come in there. All kinds of cool little swag and all that really good stuff. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Jimmy.
No, Joey, that's fine. This is the other thing that you had mentioned earlier, these cards. You get the physical card, gold, silver, and bronze. There's, I think, a QR code on the back, and it allows you to get some of the different Band of Bards comics through Global Comics digitally. If anyone's not familiar with some of their other titles, American Dreams, written by Daniel Kalbin, is a fantastic story. It's kind of set, I think, in the early 1900s with its very own superhero universe. I think Daniel calls it the Libertyverse.
Calls it Libertyverse, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and they have Manya the Mighty, Vigia, the Cauldron, Prospects, Final Gamble, Coins of Judas, and you can check out all these titles on Band of Bards, and you can get some of their first issues and kind of get into what Band of Bards is all about and what they're doing. In terms of From the Static and some of the other things you can check out. This is the J.J. Lopez cover, which is pretty cool. This is the original one that came out with the book last year that's done by Rio Burton. And then this is the one by Terry Suska. And they have, depending on what type of books you like to collect, or if you're somebody that goes in for different covers, they have a bunch of different stuff that's all, a lot of it's pretty great. And then in terms of the stories itself, you can go through the page and check out some of them. But Angler, written by Rob Pilkington with art J.J. Lopez, Ellie Wright, Jerome Gagnon is a
we got
fantastic
tons
letterer.
of nominated, like Ringo nominated and award-winning creators on this book as well.
Yeah, Jerome, who has worked before on some of the books, like Travis Gibb. They were nominated for a Ringo for the Neverland, Cthulhu Invades Neverland anthology. That was pretty neat. So yeah, there's just some amazing creators all throughout a lot of these stories. And I'll scroll through. She Who Weeps, Jared Luhan. Crash and Troy was also nominated. He was the writer of that. But Marcus Jimenez and Buddy Bedoin, just a really great creative team. This was one of my favorite stories in the anthology. I really love She Who Weeps. So yeah, just unbelievable talent that put together. And to be honest with you, like when they first told me that my pitch was accepted, I was kind of shocked. And I've ever since then, especially once I got the whole anthology and read through it, I was just like, man, I am like honored to be in this anthology. Embrace Me, Rio Burton, who did the cover we showed earlier, and Jerome, again, involved in that story. How the Devil Gets You, Doug Wood, Frederica Manson, Marta Gasparoni, and Tobin Rossico. Again, just like unbelievable
the artist
indie
who picked up,
talent.
she just
in
picked
this
up
book.
that Miles Morales cover, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, I
cool.
just saw that. But Beholden, Brent Fisher, and then I think that's Terry Suska again, who did the artwork for this, who is on the one cover. And the Cauldron, C.J. Hudson, is the. I think this is also going to be an ongoing through Band of Bards, I believe. So yeah, I mean, really great stories, and you can go to the page and check out a little bit about each one of them. I don't want to really give too much away, but I love anthologies myself, just because I like to get a little different flavor from all the different stories that are in it. I like discovering new talent, and I just think I'm honored to be a part of this one, basically, and I'm excited that they brought it to Kickstarter and they're offering a lot of cool stuff. Band of Bards is a small publisher, and I really think they're trying to do a lot for the fans to grow their audience. And I think From the Static is a great way to check out some of the folks involved with them and some of the things that they're doing and some of the stuff that they're publishing the rest of this year and into next.
Yeah, they're doing a lot of great stuff. I like all the big extras they have, the boxes and stuff. And it's a great time of year to put this out. These are the movies we're like watching on Netflix all the time, this time of year. So it's a great time of year to check this out and start reading these.
Yeah, and I will mention the Infant's another one. Wells Thompson, who wrote this one. Wells also I met from doing work at Comic Book Yeti, but Wells has done a couple of stories that he's kickstarted, such as Mechaton, which I think was picked up by Scout Comics, and then he's also done Frankenstein the Unconquered, which just had I think it's like 3rd and 4th issue on Kickstarter. Rachel Allen Everett did the artwork for this, and Nathan Kemp lettered. And then I'll scroll down. And then you can see there's the my story that I wrote, The Unfortunate Consequences of Being a Time Traveler. As I said, art by Samo, and Ben Humanet came in and kind of did some spot coloring for it, and Micah Myers lettered. But yeah, I think it's a great anthology, and I know I'm kind of biased, but I really like it. I think it's a great time to go and check it out. And really, we have some like Ringo nominated folks in here, and it just some folks that have been blowing up in the indie comic scene.
Yeah, there's lots of them. I think even Micah Myers was Ringo nominated as well. There are tons of great creators on this one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very cool to see. So as far as kind of just throw it back to everybody a little bit, Ivan, yours is doing really well, obviously. I kind of noticed, like, what has been your process? You said you're just kind of getting into Kickstarter and trying it out.
Well, I've done a lot of backing. This is my first. Sorry, you were saying.
Oh no, I was just saying you like what other stuff have you done? I mean, you have obviously a huge respected body of work. You've been doing this a long time. You've done stuff for all the big publishers and had a lot of really great hits. Has it just been kind of that you had a good following and kind of threw it up there? Is there
a little of that? A lot of it is sort of playing by ear. So next week I'm going to do things a little differently than I did this week, and then hopefully the week after that, et cetera. But at first, I spoke with people at Kickstarter and tried to make a game plan that made a lot of sense to me, and just sort of look at in terms of the tiers and what people seem to be interested in, and that kind of stuff. And I'm just trying to. I'm trying not to overthink it, if that makes any sense. Like I'm trying to, I'm trying to keep a little distance from the way I usually have promoted my work, and part of it is to see how the Kickstarter stuff, the Kickstarter community runs differently than sort of what my my usual market would be. And a lot of it's been outreach to, like, I've been lucky in that a lot of, you know, really respected writers and artists have read the book and said kind things about it. This book is so sort of unique looking to the kinds of stuff that I've done, that a part of me is, you know, the stuff that I've released so far doesn't have any text on it, for example. Mm-hmm. And part of it is me sort of laying out the aesthetic, you know, and sort of the depth of that stuff, but also the warmth of that stuff. And then I'll start to, the idea is anyway, that I will start to sort of lean a little further into just my end of it and present that stuff. Because even on my side, the voice is pretty unique to the stuff that I've done. I mean, I hate to say this because people say it for every book that they've ever done, but it really feels like the best thing I've ever done. And so I want to be, I've been just sort of, you know, trying to slowly let that stuff leak out a little bit so that people can get a sense of, you know, this has a unique voice, not just aesthetically, but my version of it is also unique. It's definitely unique to a story of the Roman Empire. It's definitely an angle of Caesar that at least I haven't seen before. And you know, it deals a lot with, you know, Caesar's neuroses, Caesar's stresses, Caesar's that kind of stuff. I mean, there's obviously spaceships and battles and all that sort of stuff. I'm not trying to, it's not Caesar in therapy, but it is, I really, really want to, you know, something that I played with in Viking also is I really like to think about when things are sort of have a powerful myth, what that myth, sort of inhabiting that myth, what that feels like, you know, like growing up in the Viking era, you know, what does it feel to want to be a part of that and to feel like you don't live up to it, or you know, that kind of stuff. And Caesar, I mean, Caesar was just constantly wrestling with his own identity and his own mythology and having to live up to this idea of, I mean, to this day, he's probably the most famous, you know, general of all time. But like, what was it like for him, you know, to have to measure up as he gets older, as he, you know, that kind of stuff. And so that stuff was very fascinating to me, looking at it from a more human perspective, like, you know, the feeling you might get out ahead of your skis kind of thing. And so that's the stuff that, you know, that I got to have a lot of fun with, you know?
Yeah. Well, and I think it works if you, maybe I'm just jumping ahead a little bit, but like when you think of how big the Roman Empire was, how unusual it was. I mean, there have been other big empires, but it kind of covered the known world. The epicness of that, we've seen it so many times in movies. It's kind of a little more impactful to, if we're going to make the jump to science fiction, you see he's not just marching an army over the Rubicon. You've got this giant disc spaceship over Greece, or with the Greece, you know, analog. It kind of gives you that slap in the face to go, no, this was bigger than anything anybody could have imagined, or had a bigger impact than some things we've gotten used to visually. I think if we just see an army, you know, going over a hill, we've seen that so many times, done so impressively that it kind of, you kind of need to get shaken out of it a little bit to appreciate how big it was. And then of course, how that ties into the characters looking at, well, I'm doing all this and you know, how that's going to weigh on them. So that's cool to see. And I think people are like you were saying, like the different formats artistically in terms of writing. I feel like I've seen a lot of people respond to whenever somebody makes a really different artistic choice, which is like even that Human Target series that came out last year, that really got a lot of chatter, made a lot, it was beautiful, of course. or even Alex Ross doing kind of a different art style in Full Circle. I feel like people are like, okay, yeah, I want not something drastically new. We've seen things like that, but it was really cool to see a different style get embraced in a big way. And I think
I feel like it's just unexpected, and talking about the empire, just a real quick comment. I just wanted to say that, it's called the Roman Empire, like all the other famous empires, or the Greek Empire or the British Empire or what have you. These are all countries. Rome is a city state, like the scope of what they were doing was, it's not called the Italian Empire. It's the name of Italy is a reference to Rome. And like, it's just crazy that it was, Rome. Sorry, this is I'm nerding out on my own just the Caesar thing in general, but it's Caesar was just a kid who raised an army, and his family was broke, and he needed to, through war, make money, and that grew to this most famous, crazy thing to where you travel anywhere through Europe, even in Africa, you'll see Roman ruins in all of these countries. And again, it's not even they weren't even a country. they were a tiny little, city state. And I don't know, that it's just the scope of that stuff is so fascinating. If you go to Rome outside of Forum, they show you the maps and the incremental things, and it goes from like a dot to half the world, and it's just nuts. Like, the idea. I mean, because how many people? I mean, think about how many people must have lived total in Rome at the time to then be able to dominate all of these others. Like Gaul, it was an entire country they captured.
I think that's super interesting, right? I think here we go. I'm gonna pull this back into the conversation, right?
Sure.
And I think they had the reach, right? They had some crazy reach. They were just a small little city state, right? And I think us as comic book creators, we're a lot like that, right? Especially when we're creating in this Kickstarter space, right? And because we're this small space, and we have to find the reach. So how are you guys as creators figuring out how to reach those people who you haven't reached before with this new stuff that you got going on? And Jimmy, I want to come to you first, because I know that you've got a couple of things that you've been doing, and I know that you're also a podcaster and stuff, so you know a little bit of the marketing world, and when creators come to you and talk to you a little bit about this stuff, how do you guys feel? How do you feel? How do you tackle reaching beyond your borders, and just kind of like this we're this small little city state, but how do you reach out even further than that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question that I'm still trying to tackle myself. I mean, social media has been one way, but more and more Twitter doesn't seem to have the reach it did, and there's been other platforms like Blue Sky, which seems to be more insular. I think branching out to other social media like TikTok, trying to reach new people. I mean, that's the whole goal, especially with the podcast. I mean, I just enjoy talking to creators, to the comic book creators, and I'd like to give folks a platform, and try to do things where I'm like reaching out to comic book stores, reaching out to other fans. I'm just trying to do anything I can. And especially I have other folks on who have a decent following, to hopefully get them to share either to their followers on whatever social media they're on, in their newsletter. Newsletters seem more and more a great way to really get to the folks that like this particular thing, in terms of if you're an artist or a writer. And so I just try and have people on and have a good conversation about comic books, and about making comic books, and about the stuff that we like and the stuff that has influenced us, and trying reach their fans and give them something that I think is an enjoyable, entertaining conversation. But yeah, I mean, it's difficult to try and expand your reach. And we have a small podcast, and we really enjoy doing it, though, and that's what we keep trying to reach new people.
Very cool. And Ben, I want to go to you too, because this question is for you too, man. Like, how do you? Because I feel like sometimes it's really difficult to expand beyond your reach that you have now, right? And it feels like, you know, it can be like a extremely hard wall that you keep getting smashed up against. So how do you break through that wall?
Well, it does feel that way sometimes. I think I was really lucky in that my first campaign went really well. I had a lot of backers, and that kind of function. You know, I can at least still message them through Kickstarter, and that was a good base. So even when I moved over to Zoop for issue 4 of Scarlet Twilight, you know, I could kind of message through Kickstarter and say, "Hey guys, we moved over here for this," and do it that way. I've been working on Twitter, YouTube, stuff like that, doing things like this, obviously, which I really, Jimmy, the same is true of me. I just like getting on here and talking about comics with people. But I've also been trying to make a jump over to TikTok, and Jimmy, I think I've seen you there too. But not a lot of other indie comics people that are at least in the Twitter indie comics circle are there. And I've kind of just been posting like little video content things of like, I'm going through my comic collection here and just taking a few pictures of some cool panels and, you know, writing about what I thought of the story, looking back at it all these years later. So that's kind of trying to basically create a reason to have something to post, even if I'm not necessarily, you know, working on a page of my comic. I can post and say, hey, here's this, and the campaign's live now, or it's a pre-launch. I'm trying to take this sort of in-between period between campaigns while I'm getting the next Scarlet Twilight ready to just build up more followers, things like that. Mix my stuff in there when I've got something to promote, and hopefully just build like more of a community. And I think for this new one, it's going to be a really fun story. It's going to be kind of Crisis on Infinite Earths meets Golden Age comics. I'm going to try and start like, you know, newsletter, Discord, kind of get a lot of people in there and say like, hey, if you want to comment here a lot and you liked the first Scarlet Twilight, hit me up. You can be like a character in this. You know, guys can hear spoilers if you want to. So I'm really trying to make it more of the type of thing I think people have been doing on Patreon a little bit, but just do that on, you know, Discord or on my YouTube channel, and then Twitter and things like that. So I'm kind of trying to mix all that up and find ways to let people who liked the first book or liked August, you know, like to say, hey, is this what's going to happen here? And like, if you want to know, I'll tell you. You know, like just really bring people into the process a little bit and hopefully make the spoilers kind of fun.
Yeah, I think it's super huge to not go silent, right? I think a lot of creators, especially writers and artists, you know, when they have their heads down, they're creating or they're writing, they don't really surface up anywhere until it's done. So I think it's crucial in that in between time when you don't have anything going on, is to continue to stay out there in the forefront, to not, you know, fall back into the shadows a little bit. So if you continue to talk about something or create a reason to talk about, you know, your community or be within the community and just kind of keep it, you know, buzzing, right? And so I think if we kind of keep that going in the in between times of each Kickstarter or each campaign, whether you're running a campaign in the direct market or the Kickstarter fit space, I think it kind of works the same. You know, you want to make sure that you are not going silent, and I think that's huge. Ivan, I've got a question for you because I know your book is such a different kind of style. You've got this different layout. It's not the size of a regular comic book. You said that you're not dropping any lettering on there on the page. You haven't really done any marketing. So how are you sitting at 11, almost 12K, man? How did you get the word out?
I don't know. A lot of people posted it to their socials. I'm in a weird situation where I'm not on Twitter. In fact, I had an old deactivated account that I went in to look, and I guess Elon's new policy, I must have not logged in the correct time, and it's gone. So it's a weird situation for me because I've taken some distance from that kind of thing on purpose. I just I had a health crisis last year, just where I was at. I just wanted to be more in the world and less in the, you know, in that kind of thing. And that's part of the experiment too, is figuring out how do I do this without plugging my, you know, the publisher has a presence on Twitter, that kind of thing, a new presence. but without myself plugging into that. So it's been interesting, and a lot of it, like I've been lucky enough that some people who have read the book have really, really, really dug it, and people have been really, really vocal, and that's a trip, because there are people who every day are replugging this thing, and that it feels amazing. It's surprising.
I think that's one of the reasons why I was asking this question, is because I wanted to see what you guys would all say, right? Is because I think the comic book business is still a word of mouth business.
Sure.
I don't think there's a lot of other businesses that are still like that, right? But every time that I hear about a comic book, it's not because I saw the creator talking about it, or I saw an ad or heard an ad, or it wasn't because it was on a movie or anything like that. It was because somebody else read it and loved it and told me about it. And I think that is key. This is still a word of mouth business, and if you go out there and be part of the community, talk to people, be a part of it, just like you said, you stepped away from the social media thing and you actually got in there, rubbed elbows with people, and actually got in there with them, and that, I think, is a testament to how this campaign is working. It's you went all word of mouth, right? And you just let kind of everybody else kind of just do the thing. And I think that's a testament to what I've been telling almost everybody that I come in contact with, is this business is still a word of mouth business. And if you can go out there and find a way to market your work the way that works for you, then I think that that's when you become successful, right? It's not about hitting the goal. It's we all want that goal. We all need that goal, right?
Sure.
We need that. But the thing is, when you've actually succeeded is when you can actually get somebody to talk about your work, and more people, and it just continues to snowball. I think that's when you've become a success.
Yeah, and I think I found your book through Hello Mueller's Twitter account, posted about it.
Oh yeah.
The
So
design.
yeah, Tom's been designing my books for like 15 years, and he's done all those beautiful, the Death Ray logo, the Roman Stars logo, not going back to Viking.
Did he do Viking? Yeah, I was gonna say that's the book of yours that really, way back then, first caught my. I mean, I'm a graphic designer too, and I can just talk about fonts all day and no one would watch. But
yeah, it's really great. He did that X-Men logo that he won an award for,
Yeah.
but like Jonathan Hickman texted me to see if he could contact him, and it was like it's funny to see, like, just from a little Viking book.
No, you're like, no, you can't.
Yeah, no, it was. Yeah.
It's my guy.
I mean, the X-Men is fine, but no, it's an interesting situation. Going back to the I mean, it's a weird thing to say on a podcast called "Explain Yourself," but one of the things I've been sort of chewing on lately is the fact that, I mean, I like when you mentioned the mystery box from this other project. It feels like a lot of the mystery is gone from comics. It feels like everything is very, very, solicitations are hyper specific in selling trailers. Everybody complains that the trailer gives away the whole movie. And it occurred to me that, like, all of the $1 billion properties that Marvel has or DC has, none of them were ever solicited. Like Black Panther, Batman, Iron Man, nobody had a choice about whether they were going to meet those characters. They were in other series that they opened up and were like, oh, wow, this is cool. But nobody ever had to pitch those. And, something, part of why I'm pulling back a little bit on the marketing is I want to keep a little bit of that mystery. I want the art to, I want a little bit of, I think that there's an element of surprise that gets lost that is really, really important in fiction. And I don't even mean from comics, but yes, in comics, but I just think in American media in general, that this is a problem where everything is sort of sold first and foremost. And
so with that said, would you market a book that would be your next project the same kind of way, or do you feel like the reason why you're stepping back from marketing in the regular sense of going out there and pushing everything, making ads and doing all that stuff, is this part of the marketing for this book because of the way the atmosphere that you've created for this style of book?
Yeah, I think, I think to some degree, and I think, we'll see how this goes and how the next thing goes. But I've toyed with the idea of doing a book that is completely a mystery and not, and not telling anyone what's going to be in it, and making it sort of a fun exercise of like, hey, if you guys want to trust me, it's like
trust fall the comic.
What's that?
Trust fall the comic.
Yeah, trust fall. No, but like for me, it's a question of, I can't promise you're going to like my comic, but I can hopefully promise that you're not going to regret that. You're going to have an experience that you're not going to regret. Like sometimes you watch a movie and you're like, all right, it's not my favorite of the movie, but there was something really interesting going on. I enjoyed the time. It took me on a journey, like that kind of thing where it's like, yeah, I'm not promising it's going to be, you don't have to buy issue 2, if you don't like issue 1, but the idea that like, we're going to do something interesting. We're going to put some love into it, and, we're going to care, and we're going to sell you something that a lot of care went into, rather than sell you a thing that is like, because I also think, again, you go back to the Walking Dead and all this stuff, that wasn't fitting. Yeah. I mean, zombies were popular, but these things are not like an expected trend, they become the trend. And like, to me, the things that have been most, look at Lost. Lost is like, there's no precedent for Lost. Lost is one of the biggest shows of all time, and that kind of thing where you couldn't market in that because nobody knew they say the creators didn't even necessarily know what the story was going to be. And like that kind of thing where there's enough there. There's a romance to the characters and to their story and to their day to day, but the mystery is still there. We're not pitching you on like an explosion that's happening later on in the thing. And that, I don't know, that's exciting to me. It's not the only way to do anything. I'm not saying it's exclusively going to be, but some part of it is, is embracing the mystery and trying to, just make things sort of sexy a little bit and make them mysterious. And
I think, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No. It's funny because Eric Canetti is doing a series that he had originally done on Kickstarter, and he's doing it now for the direct market. And he asked me how to write a solicitation, and I was like, I don't have a good answer for you because I don't know that anybody reads them. It's such a weird system because you're writing a solicitation for a retailer to read, but the audience doesn't really read it, and then the audience is it's just such a weird, convoluted path. And so I was just like, I don't know, I know people who will write one sentence, and I know people who will write an incredibly sort of ornate, descriptive thing. And I don't know which is the right answer. I'm not sure it matters, maybe it does. I'm just saying, I mean that like earnestly, like I don't know if it matters. So that stuff is me trying to discard that part of it, to whatever degree. And, this art looks really cool. You can tell that there's a vibe there. You can tell that it's not, hopefully you can tell that it's not, Caesar being in space is not a gag, but past that, there's, and again, it's also, sort of the privilege of being where I am in my career and that kind of stuff to be able to do that. But it really appeals to me to be able to tell a story that is more removed of the sales part of it, which again, sales is important. I'm not saying that part of it, but I just think that like the story has to, I've been obsessed lately with the idea that like conventions are growing at a bigger pace than the actual publishing business. And so people are really excited about comic stuff, but not necessarily about the comic market. And that's interesting to me. That's how do we sort of bridge that gap? How do we get to, but back to the stories and not just like selling art and prints and all that sort of stuff, which I'm also doing, don't get me wrong, but like, how do we get people back to like where they're excited about reading the comic?
Yeah. I think
go ahead.
There was an interview with Darwin Cook years and years ago I read where he was talking about digital comics and he was, he did storyboards and worked with digital stuff all the time. So he was, I think, a little bit more plugged into that than maybe a lot of comic artists were. I mean, I don't know for sure, but he was talking about like some of the grumbling he had heard about digital comics, and he said that's weird as a reaction, because I just think like as an artist, that's probably something cool I can do with that. If a digital platform really takes off, maybe there's something can change in a panel, or he was thinking about, all right, we're in this different place now. It's not quite the same as the old one, but there's probably some cool things we can do here that make it fun to be where we're at, not necessarily do a bad port of the old experience in a new format. And I think that's kind of what's cool about like what you're describing. Like maybe it is just something where you don't know a lot, probably a little sick of knowing everything that's going to happen. So
yeah, and maybe it'll be a dud, or one of these things will be a dud. But I think that's okay too. Like,
but how are you going to know, right? And I think that's the key is going into it and figuring it out and playing with it, right? Not all of us were successful the first time that we did anything, right? We learned from our mistakes, and if we continued the same mistake, well, you didn't learn, and right. So
the mistakes are important. The mistakes are as important as the success.
Exactly. And I say that too, like especially when you are kickstarting, right? And you are doing it for the first time, right? I always tell my people, like, you're probably not going to succeed the first Kickstarter, right? The first Kickstarter is probably going to not be successfully funded. So, but just learn. You don't have to delete it. Just you look at the numbers, look at the trends, watch what worked, watch what didn't work, and then adjust, and then try again. And if something doesn't work, then keep trying. And people don't look at your Kickstarter page and say, oh, they had too many unsuccessful. They're I mean, now if you have 20 of them in a row, that's different, right? You might not want to hit us up and we'll help you out. But but if you have a few of them, I don't think it's a bad thing, right? Because you learn from those things and you kind of make adjustments and you change those things. But I think all these things are great, right? You got to know your story, you got to know the life that your story lives in order to know how to market this thing. And I think both Jimmy and Ivan, I think you guys knew exactly what your guys' stories or your books were, and you guys marketed them to the correct people in the correct place the way they needed to. And I think stepping back from marketing with your book, Ivan, it kind of feels like it should have been that way in the first place. And I think that's one of those things where you're like, okay, it should have been in landscape, and it should have not been marketed like crazy like you usually think, because the way this is, it feels like it just naturally there's just some organic feeling here. And I think as we creators, as we look at our projects and here now and then going forward, we have to kind of look at those things and understand what kind of life those stories are going to take on, and how we market those things, and whether that means go crazy on the marketing or pull back. You just gotta know what you're gonna do with that, and understanding that is by learning what you've done in the past, and move forward and change things and adjust if you need to. Too many creators want to just come out of the gate and say, oh, well, I'm gonna make a $10,000-$12,000 Kickstarter, and I'm gonna, because of my name, and I'm gonna be amazing at this, and my name's just gonna sell everything. Sometimes that works, right? Sometimes it doesn't. But I think the key is knowing what you're creating, and then it's also being part of the community. Here's a big one that I always lately I've been talking about and really pounding into the ground too is a lot of these 5 and 6 figure Kickstarters, right, are on the platform. You got these big people like I'm not going to name any of these indie creators, but we all know those indie publishers that came from the DM and put Kickstarter books out, right? And they've brought big actors along with them to push the book and stuff. Now they've hit like 100K, 90K, they're those big, huge Kickstarters, right? Well, the one thing is we all talk about how they do amazing and bring a lot of new people to the platform, right? That's wonderful. But I think what we need to do is we need to talk to them more. We need to push them more. If you guys are going to be here, don't forget about the people who built this place, right? There's people who put every piece, every brick, every piece of wood, they put every piece of nail together in this Kickstarter space. Don't forget about those people who were here before, because they are the ones who built up this platform, this foundation that is providing you this space to create a 100K Kickstarter, right? And so, you know, it's sending out an update for a 3 and 4 figure Kickstarter, 2 figure Kickstarter, whatever. Just reach out for the smaller ones and push out an update with their links in there. Drop $1 on their pay thing, because everybody that is following you will see that. Like, there's things that we can do to help this foundation, help this community to kind of grow together. And if we're gonna, I'm cool with those people coming on the platform. And maybe there's some people that are out there screaming, Joey, they built that for themselves. Why do you want to ride their coattails? But the same thing here, right? We built this for ourselves too. And I think we just need I think if we all kind of just give back and help out one another, I think we will all, I think it will be a better place for us if we all do that. I'm getting off my soapbox now.
We need a graphic for that.
Joey's on his soapbox again.
That's one of the main things that appealed to me about being on Kickstarter, is that it is a community. Even though people use community in a cheesy way, but it's a legitimate community. And when you look at the demographics and you look at like the data and how much of the traffic is sort of just internal, like how little of how little of it comes from outside. It's amazing. There's not really anything like that,
Yeah.
I was shocked by that when I looked at it. I thought probably a ton of this is Twitter. Like, no, not much at all. Like, it really was just people clicking over from another book.
Yeah, it's all internal. Most of if you look at everybody's numbers, 80%, I will say 80% of everybody's backers are coming from Kickstarter.
Yep. It really is incredible.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, we all need to support that, because that's kind of one of the coolest things you can, in a very cynical society, that's a pretty rare thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I didn't discover. I was late to Kickstarter. It wasn't until the pandemic first started that I was even aware of. I was down to the street to my local shop when the pandemic hit, and I first learned about Kickstarter, and I've backed way too many books since then. But I found just so many amazing projects just from backing one thing and seeing the link at the bottom, and I've just discovered some like treasured comic books through the Kickstarter platform, and I love the sense of community of other folks sharing other campaigns.
Yeah. Always be that guy that shares out somebody else's work. That's the key, right?
100%. Well, guys, it's been awesome talking to you. I really appreciate you coming on the show, and it was great to see your books. Everybody watching, I'm going to run through our campaigns real quick here. Ivan's book, The Roman Stars, is got 24 days to go. Obviously, you've seen the artwork here, but beautiful stuff, really awesome format, the kind of thing that you don't normally see every week in your shop, and you should definitely go check it out. I think Roman Empire and science fiction is a great mix, and I think the take on it for the characters, sounds really awesome as well. Jimmy's book he's part of is From the Static, the horror anthology from Band of Bards. Great thing to see for the holiday season, the spooky season. So definitely go and check that out. We've got 7 days to go there. My book, We Are Scarlet Twilight, has just about 2 days to go. We're just opening this up again really quick for right before we run to print. So really excited to get that out in everybody's hands. And guys, just want to thank you again for being here, and good luck, obviously, to all of our campaigns. But it was awesome talking comics with everybody.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
All right. Take it easy, everybody, and we'll see everybody next week.